Yuck. Look at that person. They're so ragged. While having a meal at the restaurant and discussing work, a colleague whispered to me, "She's so skinny, maybe she's sick. That's so sad. But the old lady with her looks absolutely fabulous." Before I knew it, not just my colleague, but other people in the restaurant were murmuring and glancing at the same table. At that table, there was an old woman dressed head to toe in luxury brands, and a woman who looked almost skeletal, holding a baby wearing tattered clothes. Are those two? After a double take, I couldn't believe my eyes, because the people there were my sister Sarah and her mother-in-law Karen. Why is Sarah so skinny and shabby? She should be happy in her marriage, but something feels off. Feeling an ominous air and unable to move, a waiter with a glass of water approached Karen and Sarah's table to take their order. "What would you like to order?" Sarah was the first to speak up. "Pasta, please." "You'll have water. That's enough for you." Karen yelled at Sarah with a demonic glare. Sarah was too frightened to either run away or fight back, and as the surrounding people murmured at the scene, Karen seemed to enjoy it, wearing a wicked smile. Why is she smiling like that? I wanted to intervene immediately, but something about their interaction felt terribly wrong. Fearing making a scene might endanger Sarah, I clenched my fists, resisting the urge to rush over. "Alyssa, you look pale. Is something wrong?" "I just have a stomach ache. Sorry to worry you." That's all I could muster as an excuse. I'm Alyssa, 36 years old. When I was 17, our parents died in an accident. Since then, I dropped out of high school to work and raise Sarah, who's 10 years younger. Sarah graduated high school, met the love of her life at work, and at 23, she married Frank. Frank's dad used to run a business, which Frank took over after his dad passed away due to illness 3 years ago. Recently, I hadn't seen much of Sarah. After her marriage, she lives with Karen, and I hesitated to visit, worrying it might be bothersome. Plus, since Sarah had a baby, my work got busier, and finding time became difficult. We occasionally exchanged emails, and she spoke of a happy married life, which I took at face value. I never imagined I'd see Sarah so emaciated and tattered in a place like this. What on earth happened to Sarah? At their table, Karen was gleefully reading the menu, then ordered in an even louder voice than before, "I'll have the most expensive sirloin steak in this restaurant. That's all. I'm starving, so hurry up." The waiter, sensing Karen's odd demeanor, said, "Right away," and quickly left their table. Then Karen snatched the water Sarah was about to drink and gulped it down, ignoring Sarah's attempts to stop her. It was a clear act of torment, but Sarah, without any retort, slumped and held her stomach. It was as if she was gesturing how hungry she was. Why doesn't Sarah say anything? After a while, when the ordered steak arrived, Karen began eating it with exaggerated loudness. "So delicious, irresistible." As if to flaunt it to Sarah, she devoured the steak all by herself in no time. Then it seemed like Karen and Sarah were talking, but their conversation was drowned out by the noise of the surrounding people. Ignoring my attempt to eavesdrop, Karen declared, "The steak was fantastic," and got up from her seat. In the end, Sarah left the restaurant without having eaten anything, holding the baby. The thought that Sarah might have been enduring such torment all this time without my knowledge filled me with anxiety. On impulse, I apologized to my colleague. "Sorry, but I have to leave," and followed the two out of the restaurant. That's when I learned of the hellish situation my beloved Sarah was enduring. As soon as Karen arrived home, she snatched the baby from Sarah as if to take it away. "You'll be weeding the garden now. The gloves are in that shed. Come on, don't dawdle and get started." The moment Sarah tried to enter the shed to get the gloves, Karen kicked her in the back. Losing her balance, Sarah fell into the shed. Then Karen immediately closed the door and locked it from the outside. While pounding on the shed door, Sarah pleaded with a tearful voice, "Karen, please let me out. Why are you locking me in?" "Because you won't listen to what I say, of course." "But I've restricted your meals to the extreme and even took you to the restaurant to eat in front of you. And you still don't want to leave this house?" "I won't leave." "Stubborn daughter-in-law. Well then, stay there as long as you like." Karen watched over the shed with a mean look on her face. What's going on? Is she trying to drive Sarah out of the house this badly? I felt a surge of anger along with shock. After a while, when Karen went inside the house with the baby, "It's so hot, so hot." I quietly entered the yard to help Sarah. As there was no key to the door, I looked around the shed and found a window, but it was tightly shut. Inside, I saw Sarah crawling on the floor in agony. Today the temperature is over 86 degrees Fahrenheit. If this continues, her life could be in danger. I tried whispering to her, but Sarah didn't seem to notice. Realizing I couldn't handle this alone, I reached for my phone to call the police. But just then, someone suddenly grabbed my shoulder from behind, and I turned to see a furious Karen standing there. "What are you doing sneaking around here? How can you lock Sarah in there like this? And you must be Sarah's poor sister. I won't stand for this. I'm calling the police." "Then I'll report you for trespassing first. You'll be finished once you're caught." While saying this, perhaps to destroy evidence, Karen unlocked the shed. Then she dragged Sarah out and instructed her to go inside the house, and Sarah, in pain, obediently followed. I grabbed Sarah's hand as she was about to leave. "Sarah, no! You don't have to listen to her!" Sarah seemed not to have noticed me before and looked at me with vacant eyes. "You've become so thin, suffering all by yourself. Let's go home with me. It'll be terrible if you stay here." "Alyssa, don't interfere. Go home now." For some reason, Sarah suddenly shook off my hand and rejected me sternly, then went inside the house. Why won't Sarah try to escape from here? As I stood dumbfounded, Kara grinned at me wickedly. I shivered with goosebumps at her creepy smile. "You're no longer needed by Sarah. Now, leave quickly." Reluctantly, I had to leave the property. Though Sarah and I live apart now, until she got married, I had always been the one to raise her in place of our parents. She used to cherish and respect me so much. Wasn't she supposed to be happy in her marriage? She didn't look happy at all. There must be some reason she can't leave the house. I returned home, determined to find some clue, and repeatedly watched a video I had secretly taken at the restaurant. Then I realized I could faintly hear Karen and Sarah's conversation. "You must be starving since you've only been eating bread crusts. I came today because you said you'd let me eat. It's hilarious how you fell for such a lie. I have one more month to drive you out of this house. Please stop this. Why do you hate me so much? It's outrageous that a woman like you, who didn't even go to college and has nothing to offer, married my son and thinks she can be the wife of a president. Moreover, a daughter-in-law from a poor family is useless. Get a divorce and let my son marry a wealthy woman suitable for him. Then I won't have to worry about money. I won't divorce. But you see, Frank already has someone better. So pack your bags and leave as soon as possible." Tears of frustration filled my eyes as I listened to this conversation. I can't leave Sarah with such a person. I have to take her back. Just as I decided to act, I heard an even more shocking exchange. That's why Sarah rejected me. She can't leave the house after something like that. Finally, I understood why Sarah endured the hunger and torment without leaving. I must save Sarah at all costs. Hang in there, Sarah. I searched my mobile phone for any information I could find, and finally prepared to bring down the wicked Karen. Time for a witch hunt. The next day, I headed back to Sarah's house. I sneaked into the yard to peek inside, only seeing Karen alone with no sign of Sarah. Then, checking the shed, I found Sarah locked up there again. I was about to call the police on my mobile phone. However, "Back again, you poor thing?" Karen suddenly grabbed me from behind, attempting to shove me into the shed too. Even holding a baby in one arm, her strength was overwhelming, nearly pushing me down. "Mom, stop it right now!" At that moment, Frank appeared, his face contorted with anger and his fists clenched. "What? Frank? Why are you here?" "I called him here. You were on a business trip overseas, right? Do you know about that?" In fact, desperate to save Sarah, I decided to contact her husband, Frank. But not having his cell number, I scoured social networks and finally found him on Facebook, where it mentioned he was on a 2-month business trip. Immediately, I got in touch with Frank directly and told him everything that happened at the restaurant and what followed. Initially skeptical, Frank came around after I emailed him the recorded video. Shocked, Frank booked the earliest flight back to America and arrived with me, who had gone to pick him up at the airport. I kept him hidden, anticipating Karen might repeat her behavior. Then, as soon as Frank approached, he took the baby back from Karen. I was shocked to see the video. I never imagined you were doing such things. What video? The one where you're decked out in designer clothes at the restaurant, refusing to let Sarah order, even taking and drinking her water, then eating steak all by yourself. Why would you? I was sitting nearby at the time, but you didn't seem to notice. When I showed Karen the video saved on my mobile phone, she immediately began sweating profusely and became agitated. This is a misunderstanding. It was just a little argument. I don't think so. If you listen carefully, you can hear your conversation with Sarah. What? Sarah was only allowed to eat bread crusts, right? No, that's... Talking about divorce, getting Frank a wealthier wife suitable for a president, and even saying Frank already has someone better? Is this true, Frank? Of course, Frank shook his head vehemently. Then he glared at Karen and voiced his anger in a low and terrifying tone. It's unbelievable you'd only feed Sarah bread crusts and lie to try to get us divorced. Hearing this, Sarah's face lit up. All lies told by Karen? So I don't have to divorce? That's great! I won't lose my baby. Sarah endured the harassment because she was being threatened with her baby. It's unbearable to think of being separated from my child. That's why I tolerated it. Sarah tearfully expressed her relief. In the restaurant video, as a housewife, you won't get custody, so you have to leave the baby behind, Karen coldly stated. I never want to be separated from my child, Sarah quietly wept. It shocked me when Sarah rejected my help, but after seeing that, I finally understood why. Alyssa, I'm sorry. Sarah indeed was the sister I thought her to be. After all, I had raised her in place of our parents. Frank, with a gentle smile to relieve Sarah. Let's raise the baby together. And with that, he handed the baby over to Sarah. But then Karen began her final desperate attempt. Paige, a family friend wants to marry Frank. They come from a wealthy family, and you can live a much more luxurious life. Leave this poor woman and marry someone more suitable, Frank. So you can indulge in luxury. That was also part of the conversation in the video. It's despicable that you treat Sarah so horribly just for your greed. Frank was clearly fed up and didn't even want to deal with Karen anymore. Instead, he tenderly embraced the emaciated Sarah. I'm so sorry for making you go through this. And he apologized. As the two shared a moment of tenderness, Karen tried to snatch the baby away, but was brushed off by Frank and fell down embarrassingly. Meanwhile, I called the police and informed them to come quickly. The police will be here soon, so be prepared. Huh? What have I done? The restaurant video alone isn't enough evidence. Such a nuisance. Today, I recorded both Sarah being locked in the shed and you trying to force me in there on Frank's mobile. What? Now you can't escape the truth. You might spend some time in detention, a place far removed from luxury. Once Karen realized there was evidence, she collapsed on the spot, begging for forgiveness. Please, I'm sorry. Spare me from the police. but no one was in the mood to forgive her. Soon after, the police arrived and arrested Karen on charges of imprisonment. With Frank needing to return overseas for business preparations, Sarah and the baby stayed at my house. A month later, Frank returned from his trip and came to take Sarah and the baby back. Finally, Sarah could grasp her true happiness. Karen was sentenced to 3 months in prison, but was released almost immediately due to probation. She naturally went back to her house, but was quickly kicked out and disowned by an unforgiving Frank. Having spent extravagantly before, she now lived alone without her branded luxuries, rumored to be borrowing money from dangerous sources and living in fear. As for me, watching over Sarah's happiness, I too found love. Thanks to Frank's introduction, I received a marriage proposal, and am now preparing for the wedding. At today's fitting, seeing me in a wedding dress for the first time, he said I looked beautiful. I am filled with happiness.